Hi guys, welcome to my talk for today. Hope you're doing all well and are enjoying the worker-conf until now and will also enjoy the other talks. I'm a bit nervous and excited actually because this is kind of my first time giving a talk at a conference like this. And I really appreciate the opportunity, so hope you can enjoy my talk. I'm going to talk a bit of a new standard we want to achieve at our agency, and we'll give a bit of a background information to that. As you can see maybe on the title, it's going to be about Vue3 and the composition API, and also involving a bit of Tailwind and Storybook, but I will explain it all in a bit. Before we go into the topics a bit more in detail, let me introduce myself quickly. I'm Shahin and I'm working at Toba as the head of development. Toba is like a digital agency. We are based in Austria, in Bregenz and in Vienna. And we do work in the area of CMS application and enterprise level e-commerce projects. Our main stack involves actually PHP and JavaScript, and we do use like framework and tools like Vue, Nuxt.js, Storybook, Laravel, and Spryker, and a bit more. Yeah, but that's it actually to my person. That's me in a nutshell. And what we are going to talk about today, I'm gonna give you a bit of a background information, how I came up with these topics actually, or how like evolved it. And then we are going to show a bit of, talk a bit about Vue3 and the composition API. I prepared a bit of stuff because I was a bit afraid of live coding, such a setting. Just want to go everything smoothly. And also we're going to talk a bit about, as I mentioned, Tailwind, which involves the Tailwind CSS framework and the UI component library of them, and also the Headless Ui library, which they introduced a while ago. Yeah, so nothing too fancy, and I want to keep it simple for today, and I hope you can enjoy these talks. Let me explain a bit the background of this whole talk and how we came up with these topics. A while ago, we partnered up with another agency to work on a multi-brand store project. It's actually currently ongoing. And on the other hand side, you can actually see the project setup. Like the project setup is the same. And I copied the most of the stuff, but left out all the other stuff because I wasn't sure if I can show you that actually. And I just prepared some things which are going to be in the project, which involves, for example, like a product grid and a search functionality, which was developed here with the composition API. So we had the opportunity to define the whole technology stack for this project, and we didn't have any limitations, which was great news. It's not always the case. And then we came up together with the following, which is listed on the slide. We are using Vue3 and the composition API as like a guideline and as a go-to architecture. We decided to use Tailwind as the main CSS framework, and also agreed on to use the UI component library of them, and also the Headless Ui. Storybook is in place. If you don't know it, go check it out. It's really a neat tool which works with different kind of frameworks, also with React, Vue, and a bunch of others, which is like in own words basically a kind of a sandbox where you can develop all your components, test them, document them, and get it approved by a customer or your product owner or whomever you are going to show it. The whole setup actually also involves Jest as a testing suite. I'm not covering that today. At the moment, we are doing some basic snapshot tests, which will be also extended with some feature tests in the upcoming weeks. And there's also white in place, but we don't need it at the moment because we are working with Storybook, but we're going to check it out definitely also for our own stack. Yeah, and with this project, actually, we will take the opportunity to introduce especially the marked technologies and tools as a new standard for our own projects, meaning that we are going to use Vue3 and Tailwind and Storybook combined in our front-end related setups. Yeah, so now let's start with Vue3 and the composition API. I'm looking down there because I have some notes prepared so I don't forget anything. Just a small reference slide. So like, I guess most of you guys know Vue as a framework, so I'm not going to explain how it works, etc. Also not going too deep about the composition API, how it works. I'm just gonna show you some samples. And but just a small reference slide for the composition API. So it's kind of an internal API of the framework, which is available since Vue3. You can also add it actually to Vue2 as a plugin. And the benefits are actually like it makes your code more usable, and like the readability of your components gets a lot better actually. It helps you to like extract logical features or like functions of the component and then introduce them as dependencies, basically. Explained a bit really like on a high level and in words, but I hope you can follow that. Yeah, let me showcase you a bit of stuff. So I will open my editor, and here on the left side, like from my left, you can see actually Storybook already up and running on my local host. And here you can see the whole project setup. We are not going to talk about the structure, etc. But we are going to talk about the whole setup in general. So as I mentioned, Storybook is in place. As you can see, it's actually showing me some stuff already. It's really great. I prepared like a sample page. It's actually our own feature in Storybook where you can put together like a whole template, so to say, with the whole components you are developing in the project, and then you have your library actually. So this is like pretty basic. I just have like a footer. I have the header, and I have the product grid. Yeah, here. And as you can see on this simple front page, I put them all together, and I will also show you how this looks like in the code. So it's pretty basic. You are actually working just with Vue components, and then you can define Storybook stories, which are then passed into this whole application. As you can see here, this is exactly this front page on the left side, where we have our header, the product grid, and the footer. And we also defined like a property, the products, which are coming now from Storybook. They are like defined here. That's also a great feature of Storybook actually, that you can just pass in arguments to your components. And yeah, this is basically it. So like I can showcase you this, and also on a component level, as you can see here, we do have a bit of more components defined here, but only showing 3 of them. That's because we are or we only defined 3. This third one is here actually, like the page footer, the header, and the product grid stories, and they will all pass automatically into this application. Yeah. I hope that wasn't too fast or anything. Let's go a bit more into details. I'm going to show you what I did actually with Vue3, 2 specific things. I'm going to show you the one feature of the composition API and the provide and inject method actually. So as you can see, we do have a product grid here with just some sample data, and there's a search functionality which is really basic, so I can just search for the name and which works out of the box, or like not out of the box, but a pretty simple search on the title of the project products. And I did this with the composition API. Let me go a bit into detail and explain you how this works actually. So if we have a look at the product grid, it's pretty basic. This is this whole grid. So we do have our product grid search here, where we have a look a bit more in detail in a bit. And here is the grid with the product grid item. So the component product grid item doesn't do anything special, actually just renders out this single component. And as you can see here, the whole component is pretty compact. It's nothing too fancy, pretty cleaned up. Of course, also for the showcase, I guess in a real world project, when we add some features, maybe some filters or like sorting, then this will be extended a bit, but it will still keep the component logically compact. What I mean by that is like, with the search functionality, it's included, as you can see here on the line 22. I defined the use product grid search functionality, which is introduced through the composition API. We'll have a look in a moment to that part. All the other stuff is not so, like, it's pretty straightforward. I just include the components, define the products array, and this is actually where the magic happens. So this setup method is new with Vue3, which is basically the main go-to function if you define anything props or functionality related. And here is actually the search functionality included. How this works is I created our own JS file only for the search. This is pretty straightforward. So it just exports a default function called use product grid search, which gets the products, and there's the search query, and I'm returning actually the search query and the products matching the search query. So this function is pretty straightforward. It just filters all the products based on the name and the search value I'm typing into the input box. So this is basically like an encapsulated functionality, right? So I searching for products, I'm awaiting a product as an input parameter, and I'm returning the search query and the matching products. One special, or like two special things here already. We are importing the ref function and the computed function from Vue. There are new since Vue3, and what this does is actually I am defining the search query as a value, like as a variable by reference, and I'm defining the products matching search query, like basically the products which are matched are defined as a computed property. So in this way, as you can see, if I search for something, then the whole grid changes automatically. To include this in our grid, I showed you just can import this. So like I'm importing the use product grid search here, and the search query and the matching products. Ignore this line just for this second. And then basically I'm returning this for this component, right? And this is actually, so like the products are actually used here. And the search query you will see in a bit is used in the product grid search. And that's basically how the composition API works. So it gives you the possibility to like encapsulate some logical function of your component somewhere else, like other than inside your component, and then gives you the possibility to import it and use it in a pretty simple manner, actually. You can do this, of course, like with same functionalities like the filter, or like fetching products from an API maybe. So you just define a function where this happens, and then introduce it here in the setup function. Yeah, so that was a bit into the composition API, so really simple and short. There's a lot of documentation, like how it works in detail, also to the important functions like the ref and the computed, but they basically do the same as you already know if you work with Vue. So like the computed means it's a computed property. It just gives you the opportunity to use it more dynamically. Yeah, that was like a bit of the composition API. Now let me show you also an interesting concept, which is called like the provide and inject, which basically helps you to pass like parameters or like props to child components. Maybe you already done this by just like if you have a component tree where you have a parent and maybe 2 or 3 levels of child components, you can of course pass them through the whole hierarchy of your tree, which is but maybe not always so like comfortable to use, or like it gets a bit messy because you always have to pass it through your component even it doesn't do anything with it. And now you have like the provide and inject functionality, which just mean I can define here on the parent component a variable like a key which is exposed to the child component, and I of course can define what should be in there. In this case, I'm exposing the search query because I integrated the product grid search as a own component, like as a child component. Of course, I could also have like just passed in the parameter and made sure that the mutation or like the synchronization of the component model happens. But with the provide and inject, it's really easy. So here, to use this, you're importing your provide function from Vue, and then I'm exposing this variable to my child components. Now, if we look at the product grid search, which is basically only this input box with a bit of styling, you can see that I defined a model here, which is connected to the input. And here it's pretty straightforward again. And as you can see, I'm importing here inject, and I'm looking for this key and telling my component, okay, your model is basically assigned to this search query. With this, it's possible that I can use the child component and have still my search functionality working. Otherwise, it wouldn't work because the computed property wouldn't know that the search value has changed, and then wouldn't happen anything actually. So with this functionality, it's like kind of neat. Of course, you have to make sure that you know which which variables are exposed to your child components, but it's a really interesting way of kind of providing some dependencies to your child components. And it's kind of also like works like a dependency injection, right? So I'm again just providing here something and injecting it here. Pretty straightforward. And I want to show you those two functions again. The search functionality through composable. That's like I think it was mentioned in the Vue3 documentation. They use this naming. I like take it over because it kind of makes sense. And with this, I integrate the search functionality, and I provided also to my child component parameter which should have some binding basically. Yeah, also, of course, like this functionality is not limited to this component, so I could use it wherever I wanted. So if you go maybe a bit further, you can probably generalize this product grid search into a normal search where you just pass in array of items which you want to search, and then also the search query. And also, if you go like a step further, you could give like the callback how to filter it, right? So and then you would have a really general search functionality where you basically can use anywhere where you want to search for anything, and then you have like less code repetition, or you can reuse your search functionality. Yeah, that was it actually for the whole Vue3 and composition API part. So it's an ongoing project, and I want to make further content about that because I think it's really great. And as I mentioned, we will introduce this as a new topic, like as a new standard in our agency. And we see a lot of benefits like reusable components, extracting functionality, keep your components small and clean, less error prone, and yeah, I hope this kind of helped you to see maybe how you can use it. Cool, then let me switch back to the presentation, because I want to also talk a bit about Tailwind and Headless, like a Tailwind CSS, the UI component library, and the Headless UI. And yeah, also here, just a small reference slide. I assume, or even if not, nothing to worry about. Tailwind is like a utility for CSS framework. It's actually my favorite one. And a while ago, it was extended with the Tailwind UI component library. So this is basically this one. You can just have a look at the tailwindui.com, which gives you a lot of like prepared and really nice usable components, either for Vue, React, or like just barebone HTML. And furthermore, they also introduced a couple of weeks ago, or I'm not sure when exactly, but a while ago, the Headless UI. What this is like, in my own words, it's like functional UI components without any styling to integrate into your Tailwind CSS projects. And I'm gonna show you an example what I did there, and I used actually one of these components. As you can see, they're supporting React and Vue, and you can just go through the documentation. It's really great. And I actually use this menu, like the drop-down element of their Headless UI. Yeah, in this case, maybe just let me show you. It's actually this drop down here on the top right. As you can see, it's a drop down with a couple of links. Nothing fancy. I didn't also style it too much, so like it's all basic. Also, the whole project is pretty basic and from the component library actually. So like this whole footer is from the Tailwind UI component library, which also all works responsive if you want to check it out. Pretty neat actually. Yeah, so nothing too fancy on the front end, right? So let me show you the code behind it. We're gonna open up for that. Let me close this all stuff. Let me open the header. So here is all the code for the header, right? So let me switch the components that you only can see this. So this is all the header, all here. There's nothing fancy going on, and it's just this drop down. And as you can see, I defined it as a own component, and we will have a look into it now. Let me open that. As you can see, what the Headless UI offers you is actually a bunch of functional components. You can see a couple of them here from the Headless UI view, and if you use React, you can just add React here. And I'm just using them as components. And yeah, as you can see, so I just lost my thoughts for a bit. So I'm using all the components from that library, and it's like how the structure works is well documented. So I'm using the menu component, and like all the functionality regarding this opening up and closing, which is also accessible via keyboard and such, is all defined in the component itself. You can check out the components on GitHub actually. And I just followed the documentation, basically how to use it. And for example, here we now have the menu, which is this item. We have the menu button, which is the drop-down, is exactly this one. And then with a transition component from Vue, I'm using it as a container for the menu items. And here are all the menu items themselves. They are not super fancy. We don't have to look at them actually. And what with combined with Tailwind CSS, you can just style them as you want, right? So I can tell this menu object to render as a div. You can use any other tag which you wish for, and then just give the classes you need. So I could use this menu, like this menu functionality, wherever I need it, and just style it the way I need. But I don't have to worry about the functionality, like so the opening up, the closing, and also working with the keyboard, as you can see, escape button and so on. And that's basically it. So like, in my opinion, combined with the Tailwind CSS framework, it's really great and works out really, really nicely, where you can just include some functionality and style it as you need them. So you don't to worry about the functions behind it. And there's a great documentation about some additional component API or like the options of these components, basically. Yeah, that was it actually for the Tailwind and Headless Ui stuff. And that was it actually. So I hope you enjoyed it a bit. I'm still nervous, but really happy that I made this talk. And I hope that I can do more in the future and then also be a bit more relaxed and show you more details about some topics we are working on or I'm working on. Yeah, so in this case, thank you for attending my talk. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear some feedback. I hope it was clear enough, my voice, my English, or like the topics, were they in depth enough, whatever. I would really appreciate any feedback so I can improve my speaking skills. In this case, all of you take care and enjoy the rest of the talks. And really, really thank you for the opportunity. And that's it from my side. Wish you all the best. Bye.